Do you ever wonder meeting someone was not an accident but a turning point, as if your soul had been waiting for that encounter long before your mind could understand it? There comes a quiet moment in life when everything appears to connect. Strange coincidences, sudden encounters, and unexplainable feelings seem to align. It is almost as if the universe whispers through hidden symbols, offering signs that only an awakened heart can notice. When two souls are meant to meet again, nothing can stop the unseen energy that draws them closer, even when they are not aware of it. This meeting is not the result of random chance, but the natural unfolding of synchronicity that shapes the journey of individuation. Invisible forces move within the depths of the psyche, arranging experiences, healing old wounds, and awakening forgotten parts, so that when the moment arrives, the reconnection does not repeat the past, but becomes an opening for transformation. If you have ever felt that something greater was guiding certain meetings, then this message is meant for you. Write in the comments, "I trust the timing of my soul," and prepare to explore a deeper understanding of reunions and destiny. Analytical psychology, as introduced by Carl Jung, offers a symbolic and meaningful way to understand what many call destiny. When two souls are ready to come together again, it is not just an external coincidence, but an inner movement of the psyche searching for wholeness. Jung taught that all people are guided by a process called individuation, the path of bringing all parts of the personality, both conscious and unconscious, into harmony. Within this process, the reunion of souls finds a greater purpose. It represents the joining of inner aspects reflected in the other. Projection is one of the central forces at play here. Often we recognize in another person what we have not yet faced in ourselves. A soul reunion can then serve as a mirror that reveals the shadow, those denied, hidden, or forgotten parts of who we are. These reunions are not always calm or romantic. They can be challenging because they stir deep change, uncovering hidden content that must be healed and integrated. Another key part is the balance of inner archetypes of the feminine and masculine, the anima and animus. When harmony exists between these forces within us, we are more capable of recognizing the truth in an encounter without being blinded by illusions. The meeting of two prepared souls reflects the maturity of both individuals. Destiny, then, is not a fixed script, but a symbolic dance between the conscious and unconscious. The reunion takes place when both inner worlds are ready to reflect and grow, when the soul is finally able to recognize in the other what it has always been seeking inside itself. At times, reality itself seems to bend before an unseen mystery, as though a hidden order was shaping both inner and outer events. Jung named this synchronicity, the happening of two events connected not by cause and effect, but by shared meaning. When two souls are about to meet again, the universe speaks through synchronicities. These are not accidents, but invitations from the unconscious for something deeper to unfold. They can appear in many forms: a song that plays exactly when an important thought arises, a recurring dream with an unknown figure stirring strong emotions, or casual encounters that feel guided by invisible hands. These events echo the collective unconscious, activating archetypes that ready the soul for a meaningful contact with another. None of this can be measured with certainty, yet all of it carries a call to awaken consciousness. For Jung, synchronicities were not simply meant to surprise, but to spark inner change. They signal transitions in the psyche, showing that something in the soul is about to surface. When the soul senses it is close to an important reunion, the unconscious begins to align patterns, symbols, and experiences, guiding awareness toward the turning point. What may look magical is in fact the dialogue between the inner world and the symbolic reality around us. Recognizing these signs does not require logic but openness and presence. Rational thought often blocks intuitive vision, and this is why many miss the signs of destiny when they are disconnected from their own being. Reunions of souls do not take place in the narrow space of reason, but in the vast landscape of the soul, where ordinary time loses its meaning and symbols take the lead. To notice the signs, one must stay in touch with the unconscious, listening to dreams, following inner impulses, and paying attention to what moves the heart without obvious explanation. Before such a meeting, it is common for life to fall into a zone of disorder. Relationships may end, structures collapse, and old habits lose value. It is as if the old must be broken down to make room for the new. Jung saw this as part of individuation, a symbolic death of the ego, so that the self, the guiding center of the psyche, can lead the journey more truthfully. During such times, the signs begin to grow stronger. It is not rare for a certain name to appear again and again, for coincidences to repeat, or for a powerful sense that something important is about to happen to take over the heart. These manifestations should not be taken literally. Synchronicity is not a code to quickly solve, but a symbolic language to be felt and contemplated. By listening carefully to both inner and outer worlds, the soul becomes prepared to recognize the one whose presence has long existed within the unconscious, waiting for the physical meeting to unfold. What makes these experiences so powerful is how they awaken archetypal memory. The sudden familiarity in meeting someone for the first time, the instant recognition in their eyes, or the sense of having lived it all before. These are expressions of the unconscious bringing two journeys together at the right moment. When this happens, the ordinary flow of time breaks, and one steps into a deeper space where psychological time overlaps chronological time. Signs demand not just awareness, but courage. They do not promise comfort, but transformation. The meeting of souls is not the closing of a romantic story, but the beginning of a new stage in individuation. Each sign and each synchronicity is a call to walk into the unknown and let the symbolic path of the soul shape reality. To be truly awake to this is to accept that destiny is not something forced on us, but something created by listening to the unseen. When two souls come together, the emotional and psychic impact often feels so profound that words cannot fully explain it. The other is sensed as deeply familiar, vital, almost mythic. Yet this intensity does not only come from spiritual or energetic connection, it also springs from a psychic mechanism that Jung studied carefully: projection. Before there can be genuine recognition, what we feel toward the other is often a reflection of what remains unrecognized within ourselves. Projection occurs when unconscious material is placed onto another person. In soul connections, these projections often carry great power, filled with idealization, longing for completeness, and dreams of perfect union. The other person appears as the solution to pain, the source of joy, the embodiment of total love. But many times what is seen is not the other in their fullness, but an inner image shaped by unmet needs, fears, and hidden desires. It is natural for this to happen at the beginning of a powerful connection, since such relationships tend to activate great archetypes like the soulmate, the divine partner, or the sacred bond. The strength of attraction can blind us, lifting the other onto a symbolic pedestal. In these moments, everything feels perfectly aligned, as though destiny has finally delivered the missing piece. Yet, analytical psychology asks us to question this sense of perfection. When everything appears too ideal, it is likely we are facing an inner image projected outward rather than the real person. This process is not wrong, but a natural step in the growth of relationship awareness. Projection serves its purpose. It shows us the parts of ourselves that have been pushed aside or forgotten. When we project qualities or shadows onto someone else, we are given the chance to face them, enlarged and brought to life before us. The risk lies in holding on to the projection as if it were the truth. This can bring painful disappointment, since the other will eventually reveal their humanity, not the ideal we imagined. In soul relationships, the breaking of projection marks a key turning point. The illusion fades, and reality shows through. This can bring sadness, distance, or even the end of the bond. Yet for Jung, this is the moment when the true meeting begins. Once we stop demanding the other to embody our projection, we can finally see them as they are, imperfect but profoundly important, precisely because of their humanness. Love at this stage is no longer about magical fusion, but about shared individuation, where both see in each other a mirror, but not a final completion. It is here that the relationship becomes a genuine path for growth. When we are able to take back our projections, the bond stops being an unconscious attempt at fixing ourselves and turns into a conscious choice to walk together. The other person is no longer a rescuer or the one responsible for our emptiness. They become a fellow traveler with whom we can share pain, light, mistakes, and truths that come from a real meeting. In Jung's view, this process also involves becoming aware of and integrating the anima and animus, the inner images of feminine and masculine hidden in the unconscious. Many times we throw these inner figures onto the partner, mixing up archetypal qualities with actual parts of personality. By working through these projections, we confront our own inner imbalance and unrealistic ideals. Once these images are brought home inside ourselves, we no longer search for them in another, because what we seek lies within our own soul. Soul relationships then become true schools for the psyche. They awaken what sleeps, they stir, they test, and they reveal. Projection, even if an illusion, is not useless. It is often the first step towards self-knowledge. Yet it demands bravery to endure the pain of disillusionment and still move forward, opening space for a love that is more honest, mature, and transformative. Because the real meeting of souls does not occur at the shallow level of enchantment, but deep inside acceptance. When two souls meet again at the right moment, something much deeper than similarity or emotional connection shows itself. It is an unconscious call for transformation. In this process, the other becomes the clearest mirror of what we have kept hidden within us. Jung described this hidden side of the psyche as the shadow. It is everything we repress, deny, or cannot bring into our conscious identity. Strangely, it is inside our most meaningful relationships that this shadow appears most strongly. Precisely because the emotional intensity opens the inner field that allows the unconscious to act. The reunion of souls ready for each other sparks a symbolic mirror process. The other person, through their presence, energy, and behavior, touches parts of us we may never have accessed before. At the beginning, this can look like admiration or fascination. But as the closeness grows, unexpected feelings also surface: anger, jealousy, insecurity, fear of loss, a need to control. These emotions are not directly tied to what the other does, but to the activation of our shadow. It is as though that person's presence is a key that unlocks forgotten rooms in our soul. Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In this sense, the other becomes an agent of illumination. They bring to light our wounds, repeating cycles, defenses, and most of all, our hidden longing to be loved in the way we never were. It is uncomfortable, but essential. The shadow does not arise to destroy, but to mend. And it can only be healed when we face it openly, without projection, blame, or escape. In soul bonds, this occurs with intensity because the connection is beyond logic. There is an emotional surrender that defies rational explanation. And it is inside this open space that the unconscious moves with more freedom. When the other hurts us, they often touch old wounds already there. When we feel abandoned, we may be reliving a much earlier abandonment still unresolved. When we feel small or invaded, we may be confronting aspects of ourselves that we have not yet welcomed. The shadow does not rise to condemn the other, but to show us what inside we must face. Often, our first reaction is to step back. The rational mind wants to guard the ego, so we flee, blame, separate, or look for a new connection that avoids this pain. Yet, from a Jungian perspective, this is a rare chance for growth. Very few relationships have the power to awaken the shadow with such intensity as those built on a soul connection. And that is exactly why they hold such power to transform. They do not leave us the same. After a true reunion, we can never return to the ignorance we once lived in because something vital has been revealed. Still, care is needed. Not every powerful relationship is a soul bond. At times, the shadow gets stirred in harmful or unbalanced relationships that only replay destructive cycles. The difference is awareness. When both people are devoted to their own inner journey, the connection becomes a space for mutual healing. It is not about perfection or the end of conflict, but about the openness to look inward and use the other as a mirror, not as an enemy or an untouchable idol. Such a relationship calls for emotional maturity and the readiness to transform. Facing the shadow demands courage because it reveals what we try not to see, yet there lies the deepest chance for healing. The other, by showing us our wounds, gives us the chance to free those hidden parts. And by doing that, the relationship itself shifts from a battleground into a field of renewal. This is why the reunion of prepared souls is not a fantasy tale, but a rite of passage. It marks the beginning of a journey where love is no longer mere affection, but becomes alchemy. The other, by reflecting our shadow, invites us to integrate our wholeness. That is the real transformation such an encounter gives. The reunion of two souls does not happen from emptiness, need, or blind idealization, but from readiness. And this readiness does not come through luck or waiting, but through individuation, a key idea in Jungian psychology. To individuate means becoming truly oneself, uniting the conscious and unconscious sides of the psyche. It is a lonely, symbolic, and often painful journey. Yet it is what enables two mature souls one day to recognize each other without projection, fantasy, or hidden games. Conscious love only becomes possible when each has walked a deep road of self-awareness. This means confronting one's shadow, knowing the habits of projection, embracing the inner balance of masculine and feminine, and accepting imperfection as part of being human. A soul that individuates no longer looks for completion in another, but looks to share its fullness. Then the reunion is not about filling a void, but about growing together. At this stage, the relationship is no longer an escape from pain. It becomes a sacred place where two souls walk together, not to lose themselves in each other, but to grow strong in each other's presence. The bond becomes a conscious dance between freedom and closeness, between mirroring and accepting, between silence and words. There is deep respect for each person's individuality, with a quiet knowing that real love is not merging, but freedom lived side by side. Jung believed that everyone carries a spark of the self, the central core of the psyche that directs us toward wholeness. Individuation is the act of making this self visible in life. When two souls are ready, it is because this inner center is stable enough that the relationship no longer rests on need, but on communion. The other stops being a psychological necessity and becomes a spiritual choice. This does not mean challenges vanish. In fact, conscious love is demanding. It asks for honesty, openness and the bravery to grow even through pain, yet it also brings peace, not by removing conflict, but through clarity within. There is less drama, more depth, less fear, more trust, less urgency, more presence. It is as though the soul can finally rest in the gaze of another without losing itself. Synchronicities still happen, but they are seen as symbolic signs of a shared path, not magical proof of salvation. Projections still arise, but they are recognized and reshaped. The shadow still appears, but is held as part of the journey, not as a danger. Conscious love is not perfect, but it is genuine, and that makes it transformative. When two souls meet at this maturity, something new enters the world. It is not only a relationship, but an archetypal union that gives invisible fruit in reality. Love becomes a force of healing, not only for those within it, but for all touched by its energy. Because conscious love radiates balance, presence, and honesty. These are rare qualities in a world where unconscious bonds dominate. Jung would say that the true meeting only happens after the inner path has been walked, so that one does not vanish inside the other. One must be whole in order to truly love, and it is this wholeness that allows a conscious soul reunion to happen, free from fantasy, escape, and repeated cycles of destruction. At this stage, love becomes a force of evolution, an expression of the self alive in action. That is why the reunion of two ready souls is not the end of a search, but the beginning of another cycle of inner growth. It is where love stops being just longing and becomes presence, where the bond does not trap but frees, where the other does not come to fill emptiness, but to share an inner abundance built in the silence of the soul. The meeting of two prepared souls is not a guarantee of a happy ending, but an awakening to a journey more authentic and more transforming. Through Jung's lens, we see this union is much more than chance or emotion. It is the visible sign of inner work already taking place. It is when synchronicity stops being fantasy and becomes language, when projection fades and truth appears, when the shadow rises not to wound but to mend, when conscious love blooms as the fruit of individuation. None of this is random. It is the silent steps taken alone in the dark that one day bring us to the gaze of the other, not as an answer but as a reflection. If you are here now, something in you already feels this calling. The real question is not when the other will appear, but who you are becoming until they do. If this message speaks to you, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to keep exploring the symbols of the soul. And now, click on the video shown on screen to continue uncovering the mysteries of the unconscious. Your journey is just beginning. In the end, the meeting of two ready souls is not a story of rescue, nor a promise of perfection. It is the awakening of love as a conscious choice, a mirror that reflects both light and shadow, a bond that challenges as much as it heals. Such love does not come to complete what is missing, but to share what is whole. It does not lock us in illusions, but frees us into truth. And when this happens, love itself becomes an act of transformation, a path where two souls walk side by side, not as half-seeking halves, but as whole beings shaping a deeper reality together.